AI Realized, the podcast about everything that is new, now, and next for enterprise executives deploying AI. Hosted by myself, Christina Elwood, and my collaborator, David Yakobovich.
Our guests will share what's driving AI adoption, use cases, and business models for the data and AI economy.
Where the future is bright.
Welcome back, listeners. I'm David Yakobovich, one of your hosts for the AI Realized podcast. I'm stepping in this week to talk about enterprise AI deployment and thrilled to have with you one of our guest speakers from this past fall's AI Realized Summit in San Francisco. We actually have today, the guest is Tim Crawford, who is founder and CIO strategic advisor of Avoa. He was on our Overcoming Operations and Infrastructure Challenges when deploying AI to production panel that we had at UCSF. And diving more into his background, Tim Crawford is not only the founder of Avoa, he's one of the most influential CIOs in the US. He advises large global enterprises and serves as a podcast host for both the CIO in the Know and CXO in the Know. His work focuses on how technology, especially AI, can be used as strategic levers to drive enterprise transformation. Tim, it's great to reconnect with you and have you on the show.
Likewise. Thanks, David, for the invite. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, 100%. And I know last year in 2024, we started talking about big topics of what would happen in 25, like the rise of AI agents. And here we are, as we know, with AI agent technology coming to market. It's evolving rapidly. Everyone's talking about it. So for you, if you could share with our listeners to start, what are some of the most promising enterprise use cases you're seeing with AI agents, or just get us started on what you're seeing with the industry?
So, we did talk about agents last year, and there was a huge uptick in interest around where agents and agentic AI, where it was going to go, how it was going to really hit the ground running. And we saw some pretty significant tools that were coming out, solutions that were coming out. Just to throw some examples out there, Salesforce's Agent Force, or even some of the Copilot and Gemini from Google and Copilot from Microsoft. Those were other tools, but even some of the bigger organizations like SAP and IBM and Amazon, they all have tools, whether it's Q from Amazon or Watson X from IBM or Joule from SAP. The point is, everybody is looking at how they can leverage agents and agentic technology and approaches into their solutions to increase the value for customers. And that's something that we've seen accelerate pretty demonstrably in the past 12 months, which is incredibly exciting. But it's important to distinguish between what is agentic and what isn't, in the light of there's still a phenomenal amount of AI washing that is coming over. Here's my toaster, now improved with AI, for example. And so we want to make sure that we're focused on those kind of value propositions.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely in the news this year, we've seen how Samsung has turned every product into AI refrigerator, AI microwave. So it does beg the question. To be frank, though, there are AI powered features in there. So
Yes, there
it's
are.
the evolution where not only is every company a tech company, every company is an AI company. Now, speaking to agents, so you've coined the term AI agent sprawl. What are the first signs that an organization is experiencing this problem when they're looking to use agents and agentic systems? And what immediate steps should they take?
That's right. AI agent sprawl is becoming an issue for those that are starting down that path. And I just penned a blog post on this earlier this month on this very issue. And just for listeners, so that you understand where AI agent sprawl is coming from, is you think about the use of AI and how it's progressed over time. There was a fair amount of low code, no code type solutions that were using AI and then to build AI agents. And so you start to use GUIs and drag and drop and really low hurdles to be able to build these incredibly powerful agents. And we're seeing more of that as we go through time. What that is essentially doing is democratizing access to AI agents. Whereas historically, if we were to apply how we would traditionally build this kind of really robust technology, it would require a pro developer, a lot of time, a whole team of folks, a lot of time to build this kind of sophistication. And now what we're seeing is that an average user can build an agent within a matter of minutes. And so, what's great about that is you can start to expose this technology and this power and these opportunities to your entire employee base as opposed to restricting it to IT. The downside of that is you start to run into this sprawl problem. And the sprawl problem is without a good degree of governance on how agents are evaluated, prioritized, managed, sunsetted through their life cycle. Without that kind of governance in place, the problem is you run into the situation where everybody's got their set of agents and they build agents and they forget about agents or they stop using agents and they're on to the next agent. The problem with that is those agents are still consuming resources. In some cases, it might be minimal. In other cases, it could be something significant. The reality is you're going to end up with more resources consumed than what you're actually getting value from. And that inherently is why sprawl becomes a problem. And then there's the overhead of managing this entire infrastructure of agents and agentic technology that you have to consider when you start to think about governance and policies and regulatory and compliance requirements. And then there's the whole security and data privacy and how those governance models get exposed to users and administrators that are building agents and using agents. So there's a lot of moving parts here. But the sprawl problem is one of we're going to see a huge uptick in demand for building agents, especially as we truly get into the agentic era, which is another blog post that I've written about. The challenge is you need to be thinking about that up front so that you don't end up with this situation and then have to try and backtrack and figure out how to back away from it. And so that's the gist behind the agent sprawl problem.
It makes a lot of sense. And Tim, in your comments, you mentioned a couple times about governance. And I imagine organizations and executives are thinking, what governance frameworks do I need if I'm going to implement multiple AI agents across departments? Would you have any suggestions for executives getting started here?
When you think about governance, number one, you're not going to have just one model. So just put it out of your head. You're not going to have one model. And this isn't the same problem as you have when you start to think about like a data warehouse and a common schema that you use. You're going to have this very fluid workspace that you're going to need to work in. And the data comes in all different shapes, sizes, volumes, velocities. It's protected in different ways. And especially as you start to layer state and federal and sovereignty requirements into the mix, it gets pretty complicated pretty fast to the point that humans actually can't effectively manage it. Like, for example, within the US alone, there are 20 different state privacy laws on the books in the US. That's just in the US, 20 states. Oh, and by the way, some of them conflict with one another. So, how do you start to manage through that? You can't come up with just one policy. You have to be able to address the right smallest number of policies in order to effectively manage the different work streams and data streams that you're going to expose into agents. And that's really what it comes down to.
And it's not only, as you're mentioning, the different workflows and how to think about governance, but I imagine executives have a lot of misconceptions also here when they're thinking about implementing AI agents. It's so new and it's what is prod versus staging. So do you have any suggestions on these like common myths that executives are experiencing?
Probably the biggest myth or confusion, maybe is a better way to put it, is that there's the belief that an agent and a chatbot are one and the same. And those two are very different. Now, you might have a similar human interface to an electronic system in the sense that there's a chat interface that you're using. But the core difference between agents and chatbots is, or one of the core differences, there are many of them, is that with chatbots, you have to think ahead and, okay, if I'm working with a certain user base and I want this interface to be able to address certain problems or answer certain questions, I have to build that set of questions and build the answers that those questions are going to tie to. With agents, you're not doing that. With agents, you are setting up a specific agent to do a very specific task. Now, when someone interacts with an agent, one of the things that you quickly realize is an individual agent is not super useful. It is useful, but it's not super useful. Where it really gets powerful is where you have an agent that then ties into an orchestration layer that then calls other agents that also only do one very specific thing. So think about rerouting a package, for example. Great. So the initial agent is going to determine that has to go to a different system. We have to figure out where the package is, who has access to the package. We have to validate who the person is. We have to then look at what are the different possibilities. Are there costs associated with that? This might be 8 or 10 different agents that have to come in because you have one agent that might be just simply validating that Tim Crawford is Tim Crawford and that there is a package. Actually, that was probably the second agent of determining, okay, we've validated who Tim Crawford is. Now let's figure out what package is Tim Crawford talking about. Great. So we've got that. And then getting to the next stage and getting to the next stage. And so each of those steps are essentially a unique agent. They work on that particular part really well, but that's all that they do is just that one piece. And that's why this orchestration layer, and especially as you start to think about agentic, becomes really powerful. And that's the one piece that I find to be probably the most common misnomer is that agents are just like chatbots. And while on the surface there may be some visible truth to that in terms of how the user interacts, behind the scenes they are vastly different. There's a complete tectonic degree of sophistication that comes with agents that you don't have with chatbots.
And so, diving a little bit deeper here, you've discussed the agentic era both in writing and through our conversation. And you just share with our listeners, you differentiated between chatbots and agents. But if we think forward looking, how do you see the relationship between humans and these more sophisticated AI agents evolving in the next 1 to 3 years?
Yeah, 1 to 3 years is actually a lot of time in this era because things are accelerating so quickly. Just look at generative AI. Generative AI is something that's just happened in the last, 2 years, a little more than 2 years. And look at how far we've come. And now we're talking about agentic. I think in the next 1 to 3 years, you'll see a couple things happen. One is culturally, you'll see more acceptance of people willing to work with agents. Today, culturally, that's one of the leading challenges that people have in working with agents. I have a group of forward-thinking CIOs that I work with, and they're part of a CIO think tank that I lead. And we surveyed them to ask them what are some of the biggest challenges that they're seeing with AI agents. And internal culture was the second highest issue with or challenge with AI agents and being able to adopt AI agents. The top one, by the way, is data, location, strategy, access. Data strategy is one of the top issues that CIOs are having to work through right now. And by the way, did another survey with the CIO think tank, and AI was one of the leading factors that is driving organizations to rethink their data strategy. So you can see this kind of tie in. So I think in the next 1 to 3 years, we'll see a couple things. One is culturally, we'll be more accustomed to using agents and engaging with agents because they're going to be smarter. It's not going to be the dumb chatbot that can't understand my question or doesn't have my situation predefined within its knowledge base. You don't have to do that. And then the second thing that I think you'll see is greater comfort with regards to automation. Because when you start to move into agentic, you're talking about agents calling other agents and automating some of these processes. And then the third piece is this concept of digital agents. And when you get to digital agents, you're essentially creating an agent that acts a lot like a human. And we saw this with companies like Salesforce did a demo at one of their recent events last year where they showed calling in and being able to interact with what sounded like a person, but it was actually a digital agent that was able to order a product and make some changes to a product. And I think we'll see more of that and more comfort with that over the next 1 to 3 years. But that's the great opportunity about this. Let's not misunderstand that there are some hurdles we have to get over in order to achieve that. So this is not a situation of great, it's a path and it's just all roses. There are some thorns along the way that we have to be careful and have to navigate through as we go through this process. And that's what CIOs are contending with today is what does that pathway look like? What are those opportunities and what are the steps that I need to take for my organization so that I can try and embrace and leverage this technology and this innovation as best as possible, but at the same time, make sure that I'm focused and prioritized around the value opportunities that lead toward my business objectives without introducing undue risk and governance problems into the fold. And so that's where CIOs are today.
Wow, you've given us so much knowledge today, Tim, and I can't wait to learn more about that and see that at our AI Realized Summit 2025 that'll be back in San Francisco. And to dive deeper into your work from things like you mentioned, the CIO think tank, to listening and tuning into your episodes of CIO in the Know and CXO in the Know podcasts as part of Avoa. So thank you so much for joining us. We've really love deepening this relationship from AI Realized. And who knows, maybe next time we'll have some AI agents supporting us on one of these sessions.
Actually, I'll send my agent to be a guest on your podcast instead of the real me.
We love it. We'll use the 11 Labs voice of yourself, so that'll work quite well. For all of our listeners tuning in, this has been Tim Crawford of Avoa, founder and CIO strategic advisor here on the AI Realized podcast. Tim, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, David. It's been a pleasure.
Where the future is bright.